going? Raise your hand. Rob is with us this evening. I just wanted to give a shout out to Rob. He's got an event that's coming up at the City Hall that I attended last year, and this is well worth your time if you're interested in international affairs and in innovations and solutions. In fact, it is the Innovation and Solutions World Conference. It'll be March the 28th, so coming up quick. The evening of the 27th and then the 28th. This is a conference that will blend international business issues and foreign affairs challenges. It'll touch on such topics as Russian sanctions, climate change, sustainability, supply chain issues, cyber security, China's innovations and technologies, transportation, and other areas as well. Foreign affairs will be a part of this conference as well, too. There will be a number of retired ambassadors, foreign service professionals, generals, colonels, and international military experts, as well as university-associated folks. See Rob if you want to get some more information about that. Again, a great opportunity to hear some things at a conference that you're not going to normally hear, maybe in the Greer area. So I was with you last year, and we talked about the future of Greer. And so I didn't want folks to be turned off by the fact that the topic this year is going to be the future of Greer, because I'm not going to give you the same spiel that I did last year. Last year's event and topic basically was a really deep dive of information, particularly in regards to demographics, trends, statistics, numbers, all that kind of stuff. And I force-fed you plenty of that last year. Just as a follow-up to that, though, what I wanted to tell you is much of that information is unchanged. Most, if not all, of what I told you last year in terms of trends and trend lines and numbers have either been met or exceeded in some fashion. We are continuing to see steady growth. We also, based on the census, wound up with a number that we feel was undervalued in a lot of ways, because if you think about a 2020 census, they wrapped that event up about mid-2019. Just so happened that two of the largest years that we've had in terms of new housing starts were 2020 and 2021. Well over 1,000 both those years. So if you extrapolate that out just a little bit, we are probably somewhere in that mid-40s kind of range. Now, we'll not get an official number unless we pay for an updated census in 2025, which we may or may not do. Actually, for us, 50,000 is more of a target, because that'll give us access to some of the federal money that we're not able to get right now. But nevertheless, it would be interesting to see. But here's the thing that really bodes well for Greer in terms of continued growth. And that is, number one, we have room to grow. One of the things in South Carolina that we deal with on a regular basis is our antiquated annexation laws. And it is almost impossible, if you don't have your own Commission of Public Works, to offer the kinds of things that you need to grow. And so many cities are landlocked in that regard. We've got great infrastructure already in place. Tip of the hat to our Commission of Public Works. Our outer boundaries are pretty well defined. We've got approximately 10 to 15 square miles that we can grow into in the Abner Creek area down there. And the good thing about that particular area is that there are still a lot of large tracts. It's very interesting to developers and the home builders. And we are in one of the 5 fastest growing states in the nation. As our economy waffles just a little bit, it actually produces more inbound people to the state. So, this is a case of when it's good, it's really good, and when it's bad, it's better. So there's a lot the lot predicted for this particular area that's going to keep our growth on a steady projection. I have no doubt by the 2030 census that we will be a city 50,000 plus. So that gives you some idea of where we're going. I don't want to run down the rabbit hole here, but if you take a scale map of the city of Greenville and you place it on our map, the city of Greenville sits in our footprint without touching the other side of 85. We have the lowest density in Greenville County right now in terms of residents per square mile. I know we're growing, and a lot of people say we're growing too fast, and some people say it's getting too busy and all that sort of thing. We have the lowest density in Greenville County of any of the other major cities. So we've got plenty of room to grow. We're going to have a lot more growth. Some of you probably saw it in the newspaper last week. County of Spartanburg came out and said there are more jobs available. There are more jobs in Spartanburg County than they have residents. Don't think for a minute that didn't make it to somewhere in Nebraska or somewhere in Illinois or somewhere in New Jersey. I guarantee you somebody picked it up. So, all right, where do we go from here? Well, there it is. There's the depot. That's where it all started, about 2 blocks from here. And we want to talk about where it is we go from here. And not just necessarily in that sort of demographic kind of space, because we've got a compelling story. We already know that what's going to happen over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years is going to take us somewhere. But where is it that we are going to go? What do you notice about my lists there? Top 10. Top 10 list. Boy, we love top 10 lists, don't we? This is, we're in the Final Four season, but football's got a top 10. We've got the top 10 universities. We've got the top 10 movies. We like to find out what the top 10 restaurants are. We want to know what the top 10 businesses are, top 10 products are, all those kinds of things. Why do we like top 10 lists so much? Makes you feel exclusive. What else? Wins. What else? Popularity, yeah. Yeah, we want to refer to that when we want to do something different or, find out what the best is. All those kinds of things. Anything else?
Compare yourself.
Compare yourself to others. I think, let's do this real quick, excuse me. How many business owners we got in here? Raise your hand if you're a business owner. Vast majority. How many people have a job that starts with a C? CEO, CFO, CIO, COO, chief bottle washer. Who's got a C in front of their name? Okay. How many executive levels have we got with us this evening? How many managers, team leaders, regional leaders? Got anybody in here that's got a side gig? You're starting your own business? Might not be quite there yet, but you're ready to go? Well, that's what part of this is, so I hope we've got some folks in here. So let me ask you this, and you don't have to raise your hand on this one. How many of you have a mission statement? some sort of statement. Business statement, mission statement, vision statement. One of those. How many of y'all have got one of those? I suspect the vast majority of you do, don't you? You've got something that is a guideline, don't you? Most people do. I'd be willing to bet that somebody in here in that statement says something to the effect of they want to be best in class. Got anybody that wants to throw their hand up like best in class? I'll tell you one thing. I went to a press conference at BMW today. I couldn't keep track of the times they say best in class. Best in class. How many of you got a sales goal to be the #1 sales team in Greenville-Spartanburg region? How many of you want to be the largest of whatever you do, car dealership, sell widgets, whatever, in the state? Somebody does. We do that so we can measure ourselves, and because we want to be respected by our peers and leaders in innovation. Best in class. Let me ask you this. Whose business statement or model says this? I simply just want to be mediocre. Got anybody who's willing to raise your hand? I don't know that anybody's got a business model that says, all I want to do is get by. Because that's not the object. That's not why we go into business. It's not why we want top 10 lists. It's not why we do what we do. Remember what I talked about just a minute ago about numbers? Well, this is a top 20 list, but it's intentional. Take a minute just to absorb a little bit of what this looks like. It's the top 20 cities by population in South Carolina. Now, let's stop and talk about that for just a minute, because to some degree, this list is based entirely on population. And there is ways that we can encourage that or discourage that as a city, but the number is the number. So similar to a business that wants to measure themselves against each other, there's a bar of some kind. Is it products sold? Is it patents earned? Is it whatever it is? So while this is not a perfect measurement in terms of how a city reacts or is, it's what we've got to base our comparisons on when we want to look at how we stand up against the rest of the state. What do you notice about that? Come on, we just talked about it a minute ago. What do you notice about that? We weren't in the top 10 in the 2019 census. Where are we now?
In the top 10, at 40,000.
We're somewhere right around, probably tied with Goose Creek at 8th. We're somewhere in 8, 9, well, we're way past 10. So 7, 8, 9, we're right in there somewhere. Right now. Right now. My dad lives in Florence. I graduated from high school in Florence. That's a fluke. Well, I don't know. We got anybody else in here from Florence?
My son graduated from Florence.
Okay. Well, don't tell him.
It's great.
It's a good town, but it's not a top 10 town. Sumter. Everybody familiar with Sumter? What do they say when you say, where are you from? I'm from Sumter. What do they say after that? You know where the Air Force Base is? That's what they say. Yeah. You know where the Air Force Base is? That's what they say. Goose Creek, great city. Somerville, Greenville, Rock Hill, Mount Pleasant, North Charleston, Columbia, and Charleston. That top tier right in there. Every one of those is a legit top 10 town for some particular reason. I mean, we could go down this list and name what we know about those right there. Don't write it down. I was going to say I'll bet you some money, but don't write it down. In the 2030 census, who do you think is going to be number one? Nope, not Greenville. They're one of the cities that is semi-landlocked. Not Charleston, close. North Charleston. Their current city limits right now encompass 96 square miles. Now, part of that's water. They won't be building on that. But at the rate that they're growing right now, they'll be over 200,000 people in the next 6 to 8 years. You're probably going to see North Charleston, Charleston, Columbia, Mount Pleasant, Rock Hill, Greenville, and then the next 2 or 3 of which we're going to land right there somewhere. So what's going to take us there? Well, number one, it's going to take a concerted effort. And I say that not because of the growth issue, because what we talk about to begin this, that's going to happen. That's going to happen. Even if the national economy goes to hell, we're going to still be growing because people are coming from other places here. If we're going to assume one of these places, we've got to be sure that we can provide the amenities to serve all of our residents, address community issues, and provide top 10 leadership at all levels. That means from the people that are mowing the grass at the park to Andy and his staff back there. And it includes council as well, too. You know, the other interesting thing I thought about as I looked at this list, how many cities are on there from the upstate? Yeah. You got Greenville. Rock Hill's in the upper part of the state, but look at that list. It shows you the difference in terms of where the most population is, but that doesn't necessarily correlate to where the most business and activity is, because we know it's where? In the upstate. It's in the upstate. So you're going to see Greenville grow beyond this number, but not beyond some of these other numbers, because they're getting to the point that their growth is going to be vertical. We've still got a lot of land to grow horizontal. Now, North Charleston's still got a lot of area to grow into. Charleston, their growth's only going to be upward. Columbia, I don't know that much about. Mount Pleasant is getting landlocked. They're not far behind North Charleston. I think they're close to 80 square miles, Andy, maybe something like that, last time we talked with the folks down there. So anyway, how does a city position itself to be a top 10 city? Well, number one, you got to get in the top 10, and we're there. There's no way around that. So here's my idea. We're going to hold weekly pep rallies out in the middle of the street. Maybe we'll hold some inside every now and then. Because if we do enough cheering and we do enough yelling and all this other stuff, we should be fine. What do y'all think? That going to do it?
Michelle will look great.
PEP obviously stands for something else. There are three things that as a city we're going to have to address, and they are critical to growth and being a top 10 city, because there's a whole lot more to being a top 10 city than just the population. How many people do you think are moving to Sumter? How many people do you think are moving to Florence because they're a top 10 city? It takes effort. Place, equality, equity, and prosperity. In addition to everything else that we do every day, day in and day out, we still have to provide basic services. We are servicing a growing community. It's not easy picking up garbage for 45,000 residents, let alone 55,000, 65,000, 75,000. We've got to be able to do that. We've got to be able to plan ahead from infrastructure, for road repair, for our manpower needs. We hired 100 people last year. 100 people last year. That's just to keep up. We have to regulate new growth. We've got to budget for growth. We've got to meet our manpower demands. We've got to do all the kinds of things that a city does, including creating this sense of place. And I'll talk just a little bit more about that in a minute. To be a top 10 city, we have to support the needs of a growing and diverse community. I use this phrase from time to time, and I know many of y'all do. The rising tide, what? Lifts all boats. It's not true in city development, because it is a fact that a city can grow beyond all of its residents. You know, we look at things like median income and median household income and all those sorts of things. If you know the difference between the average and the median, we can walk away from parts of our community that we cannot afford to do that. Everybody has to be engaged for us to be a top 10 city. Everybody. Prosperity. Oops, let's see, I got behind on my slides here. Equity. We talked about equity. Prosperity. This effort right here is part of that effort. We've got to be a community that will grow its own in a lot of regards, because prosperity is, and we'll talk about this for just a second here in a minute as well too. It's about a whole lot more than just generating jobs. And so we'll talk about that in just a minute. I got a definition here for place. Place. What do you think when you think about place? What do you think about? What strikes you about place? It's kind of nebulous, is it not? Oh, that's a nice place. Oh yeah, downtown Greer is a nice place.
It's experience.
It's about an experience. What else?
Belonging.
Yep. What else?
Where you live, where you work, where you play.
Yes. What else?
Atmosphere.
The atmosphere. All of those things. This is the best definition that I have found. It's from William Fulton, who's an urban planner of extreme note. And he says, place is the character and quality of a location. Most of us never think about the idea of place. Usually we just drift from place to place every day without conscientiously processing the experience. But whether we are in a city, in the suburbs, or in the country, we intuitively understand what? Place. We know a place when we like it or not. Isn't that true? You walk into a restaurant and what's one of the first things you think? Does it smell good? Are you the only people in there? Did you look at the menu? All those kinds of things. And you make a what? A decision about that. Is this a good place? I don't know. Let's try it. You know, so many times we don't even look around at where we are, do we? We just take it for granted. And one of the things that we have found as a city is that creating a sense of place has changed the paradigm for us probably more than anything else. Name some of the things that you think are a great place in Greer. City Park. What else?
Trade Street.
Trade Street. What else?
Back home got that.
Back on, well, what's left of it? Burned to the ground. What else?
Rear Rec Tennis Courts.
The recreation opportunities. What else?
The museum.
The museum. Yeah, we knew that was coming back there from the corner. Yeah.
The spinning Jenny.
The spinning Jenny.
Oh my God.
Yeah. All of those things create place. Since 2008, when we built the park in the city hall, till today, including the project here downtown, right outside the street, the city of Greer has invested over $100 million in creating place in this community. Somebody hold Andy up. We'll do that again in the next 5 or 6 years. We'll do it again in the next 5 or 6 years. Equity. Again, a definition. Equity is what happens when all members of a diverse population have equal opportunities and support to be successful and thrive. Equity is more of a state than it is a step. We've got to be aware that while we are a growing community and we celebrate lots of wins in this community, that we still have food insecurity, housing insecurity, medical insecurity, aging issues, all of those kinds of things. And if we're not attentive to that portion of our population, we will never grow beyond that. We've got to take care of that. And part of the way we do that is through prosperity, because this definition comes from William Fulton as well too. Prosperity at its core isn't about a single business. It's about the permanent assets that an economy or economic development effort creates. If cities are to be sustained beyond the life cycle of their current economic drivers, they cannot neglect a strategic what? Plan or effort. We've got to know where we're going to get there. And one of the ways to do that is to grow our own. Efforts like the Huddle and the platform and entrepreneur programs and enticements for people to start new businesses, opportunities for people to start new businesses here, all those kinds of things. I saw a quote not too long ago, and I can't attribute it to who it was, but he said, if you're in economic development, the question is not what is the next business to come, it's where are you going to start after the last business leaves? We've got to be intentional about prosperity in our community. So, where are we going from here? We've come a long way since that depot was built. You could have gotten on that train, well, not that train, but you could have gotten on a train there back in the 20s, 30s, 40s and paid a nickel and gone to Taylor's. I think it was another nickel to go to Greenville. I don't know, you might could have gone to Greenville on a nickel, I'm not sure. So where are we going from here? I got a 4-year-old granddaughter. She loves playing hide and go seek in our backyard. You know how hide and seek goes? Well, she's good at counting through about 15 or 16, but then it might be 30 after that, or 41 or 19 or whatever. So when I go hide, I know I've only got to about 10 or 12 because 20 might be next or 30 might be next. And she's going to yell what? Ready or not, here I come. Whether or not she counted to 20 or 25, whatever we agreed upon. Are we a top 10 city? I'm not sure. And to tell you the truth, right now I don't think we are. We may be by population, but we got a lot of work to do. And how are we going to get there? Think about that top 10 list. Reno, how are we doing on time? I got just a... Look at that list. Oops. Charleston. Internationally recognized year after year after year after year. Columbia, home of state government, university town, lots of activity there, hub of a lot of things. North Charleston just tore down about a 60-year-old recreation facility that they're basically going to build back just like it was because that's what the community wanted. Had a gym in it with a tile floor so they could roller skate. It's going to have a 25-meter pool. It's got a couple of other amenities, $25 million. You know what? Didn't even make the news, but I saw it in the paper about 2 weeks later. Their council just voted to do a 96-acre park on the waterfront down there. Mount Pleasant. What do you know about Mount Pleasant? It's a top 10 city in a lot of different ways. Mount Pleasant has probably used the penny sales tax to do more road improvements than anybody in South Carolina. They are on the ball in Mount Pleasant. Rock Hill. What do you know about Rock Hill?
University town.
It's a university town. What else? Yeah. Well, they did have a football facility there. I think it's about halfway on the ground right now. But that's close. What do we think of when we think of Rock Hill? Charlotte, but it's also by far and away the most sports-oriented town in this state. Without a doubt. You race a bicycle? You want to go race on a velodrome? Where do you go? Rock Hill. Guess where the next race is after that? Next closest one's in Pennsylvania. You ride a BMX bike? Where do you go? Rock Hill. They were the first city in the nation to be approved for and build an Olympic training BMX bicycle track. How many recreation facilities does the city of Rock Hill have? I looked it up and counted them today. 40. They've got a softball facility that is over 90 acres. Think about how many softball fields you get on that. They've got a soccer facility that has over 70 acres in it. How many fields in that park? Andy, you got any idea?
Manchester?
Yeah.
15, I believe.
Speaking of 15, they got one building, one gym. Listen to this. We have one gym in the city of Greer, one gym. It was built about 50 or 60 years ago. It's got a tile floor so we can roller skate on it. Rock Hill has one building out of 8 that's 170,000 square feet that has 8 regulation basketball courts and 16 regulation volleyball courts, a 1,500 seat championship arena with a scoreboard above it, and a college certified basketball court there with their own TV production facility in that building. That's a top 10 city. That's a top 10 city. Greenville, nationally known. Summerville, if you've ever been to Summerville, great little town. Much of the growth that's going to occur around Summerville is going to be in these new developments. I don't know how that will impact them, and I don't know how much additional growth you're going to see. They may be one of the ones that are going to get a little bit stranded. But you're talking about Nexton, and what's the other one right up the road from Nexton? There's another one up there. Nexton's going to have a finish-out build of 28,000 residents. The others are going to be similar to that. They're all top 10 cities, and they're top 10 cities for a reason. So how are we going to get there? We going to be Thomas the Train? The question no longer is where do we go? We're already there. That train's already left the station. So how are we going to position ourselves to be a top 10 city? Because there's a difference between just being a top 10 city and being a top 10 city. Spartanburg is, and I don't say this at all with, it's a matter of fact more than anything else. Spartanburg is landlocked. They can't grow. They're landlocked. Their population will grow in the future, but it's all going to be vertical growth. It's going to be based on apartments and colleges and that kind of thing, because they didn't control their destiny when it came to infrastructure. They are a top 10 city regardless of what their population is going to be. They have an effort called Spartanburg Academic Movement. Anybody heard of that? Well, don't forget it. Spartanburg Academic Movement. It has been in effect for the last probably 10, maybe 15 years. A nonprofit started and grown in that community that tracks children from birth to high school graduation and then through college if they pursue that route. 2 weeks ago, they got named to receive a $75 million grant to fund that program. All they've got to do is match that grant with $25 million. I saw the county administrator today at a meeting. I asked him if they had the money. He looked at me and he said, "Not yet, but we're close." Folks, if we got a $7.5 million grant and all we had to come up with was $2.5 million, could this community do it? That's the difference. That's the difference between a top 10 city and a top 10 city. Anybody get the state paper? Front page of the state paper this past Sunday. Will Scout Motors impact Blythewood like BMW changed Greer? Page 2. But even as Greer has flown under the radar, yeah, I'm just going to tap harder and harder on this table because even as Greer has flown under the radar, what's it going to take, folks? They're not even a top 10 city, but we just talked about them. You know where this came from? It's off the back of an American Airlines magazine. Last time I flew, my wife showed me this. There's only one place at the top of the list: Spartanburg. That's what top 10 cities do. If we're going into the top 10, I'm going to prefer to go in that 10,000 horsepower engine train right there. I want to drive it through the door. I don't want to be the conductor on Thomas the train when we go into the top 10. If I'm going to the dance, I'm going to be dressed and I'm going to go in the front door. Probably need to get James to fix me up for that, but I'm going to be dressed and I'm going in the front door. And I need that commitment from this community. I'm going to tell you, I've already said it, we've got a lot of work to do. Not just the city. The city can't pull this off. It's really not about just the city. It's about this community, and it's about the people in this community. It's about the organizations in this community. It's about the nonprofits in this community. It's about everything about this community. It's about the museum. It's about place. It's about fields. It's about buildings. It's about all those kinds of things. And while we can take the lead and we're willing to do the work, are we ready? Because it's not easy. There's going to be blowback. There's going to be pushback. There's going to be obstacles. There's going to be hills. There's going to be problems. There's going to be change. My brother-in-law was the city administrator for Mount Pleasant for 22, 24 years. He had one two-term mayor. It's not easy to do this. And we can't do it by ourselves. Let me ask you something. If you're on the board of the chamber, does it say somewhere in y'all's vision for who you want to be that you want to be a top 10 chamber? If you're on the board of GDC or the platform or any of these others, does it say somewhere that you want to be a top 10 organization? If you represent one of our social service agencies, does it say you want to be one of the top 10 in the state? We've got to get there. We've got to get there. And here's why. We can lead the wagon train. But if we're out in front and everybody else isn't behind us, it doesn't do us any good. Because there's going to come a point in time where we're going to have to ask you to support a referendum. And that referendum may mean your taxes are going to go up. Are you all in or not? Because we need to know. It's a crying shame we have one gym in a city of 45,000 people. If I had young kids, I'd show up at every city council meeting with a poster board that said when. We may have to do a bonding or some sort of referendum on that. Are y'all going to stand up we're gonna be doing a lot of things, and we're gonna need some help. We can't do it alone. And there's no need for us to do it alone, because if you don't support it, it's not worth doing it. We'll be 8, 9, or 10, and we'll just be happy that we're there. I'm going to close with this, because I just can't believe that I came across this. In all the excitement about Fairleigh Dickinson winning the Purdue game, the basketball game, after the game, they were doing an interview with the coach, and the kids were jumping all over him and all that kind of stuff. And listen to what he said. I told my players it's not good enough that we just got here. We came here to win it. Are we here to win it? Thank y'all. I appreciate it.